Hello, my name is Siva Kumar, and thanks for watching Umoja Shots, where we deconstruct the complex solution in a simple and understandable form, taking one issue at a time. Today, we are going to talk about the role clarifications for the field missions, especially the hybrid scenario and service center scenario. Let's start with the context, the past. It was not too long ago when the peacekeeping missions started Umoja implementation. We had a design. In the design, two things were very clear. One, the application was SAP and the processes was Umoja. And all the peacekeeping missions were implemented with the foundational aspects, which basically brought in the sales and distribution, finance, grants, real estate, and all the other subordinate modules. And they all worked on one thing called enterprise structure. An enterprise structure in SAP is the financial enterprise structure, which is basically the definition of the business areas, the cost centers and the fund centers, and all these pillars and the processes anchored on the enterprise structure components. With the new invention of the extension components, the cluster 4 is going to bring in 6 more major modules into your Umoja ecosystem. And they are personal management, benefits management, payroll, organizational management, time management, and travel management. That takes us to the present, the now moment. We have the design and we have the SAP and we have the Umoja processes, and now with the inclusion of the extension part, we are going to have two different structure. In addition to an enterprise structure, we are going to have an organizational structure, which is purely your budgetary structure, the approved budgetary structure reflected in the HR part of your business. And also we are going to construct what is called an operative structure, which is kind of a hybrid, which will be utilized to leverage and implement the service center component. Let's understand the basics before we get into the details. The enterprise role is a set of privileges and it reflects what is called a job function. And by now, you might be knowing what the enterprise roles are, and you utilized them in your foundation, and you utilized them in the extension for your role mapping exercise. And also, notice an enterprise role is always assigned to a user, and we all know more than one enterprise roles can be assigned to a user. However, a part of an enterprise role cannot be given to a user. And when we constructed the HR and travel roles, we clearly classified them into three parts. One is called the drafting roles, and a set of approving roles, and a set of monitoring and managing role. The reason for them is at a later point in time, they will kind of allude us into the role mapping exercise, where the drafting number of users assigned to a drafting role will be proportional to the number of transactions happening in an entity or in a service center. And the approving is proportional to the budget. In this case, I'm taking approving is purely in the financial context. And also, the monitoring and managing is always proportional to the managers and the leadership. So the idea is, if your manager is not going to do a day-to-day transactional work, it is better to map them to the monitoring and managing, where all transactions, all approvals in Umoja are recorded and can be reported. And the next one is the enterprise role controls. When we made enterprise role, we also made sure that there are certain set of controls in certain set of roles, and the controls are which enables us to assign the role to a set of users to exercise the transactional capability. For example, a self-service role is given always to a staff member under managers, and a global role is given to a person where with that role they can create or manage a transaction for the people in the entire Umoja system. And the central roles are the roles which are assigned only to a central location or the UN headquarters, something like a payroll processor roles. And entity roles are the roles which have been given to a standalone entities, and within entity roles are the roles which are given to the departments or the units within an entity, and an operations center role is given to a service center which can manage more than one entity, including their own entity itself. And this applies to all the modules in the extension part, like personal administration, organizational management, time, benefits, payroll, and travel. Before we allude into the details, let me give a brief about the payroll, because payroll is a little different than the other modules. In the cluster 3 so far, we have got the differentiation of the payroll based on the payroll area. There are 4 payroll areas, so the staff members in those respective regions are mapped to those payroll areas, and the payroll processing happens at the payroll area level. If I am a payroll lead processor and I'm assigned with the payroll area of Americas, I can run the payroll for all the staff members who belong to that payroll area. So we have the Americas payroll area, which is done in New York, Africa payroll area, which is done in Nairobi, Europe payroll area, which is done in Geneva, and Asia payroll area, which is done in Bangkok. And again, this is as of cluster 3, and in cluster 4 you might get more. However, in our context of peacekeeping missions, it is a little different. In the peacekeeping mission for the cluster 4, we are converting only the international staff, and irrespective of where you are located, irrespective of where the people are assigned to an organizational unit, all PK mission payroll will be run from the headquarters. And when it goes to the cluster 5, where the local staff member comes in, there might be a change, or that might follow the same pattern, which is very hard to predict at this point in time. Also, let's get into the basics before getting into the other roles. And role assignment, for example, an AP user, HR partner, or shipment processor, is always assigned to an entity. In this example, I picked up 2 entities. One is the Regional Service Center at Entebbe, and other is the MINUSTA. The reason is RSCE is a structure by itself, and also it serves some other client entities. However, MINUSTA is a structure by itself, and it manages by itself, which is called a standalone. But how this differentiation happened in Umoja? To understand that, we need to bring in a new concept called structural authorization. When a role is assigned, especially from the UE1 side, the role assignment always get linked to an organizational component. This organizational component is purely your budgetary structure. In this example, when I assign an RSCE role user with an HR partner all on RSCE node, he or she can manage everyone under RSCE. This is again a budgetary structure. To give an example, if a user is assigned to a HR partner all under structural authorization, he or she can perform all the transactions under HR partner role, and will be able to approve all the workflow which originates from the staff members under their domain, and he or she as a staff member can also exercise the self-service component. Now, after cluster 3, when we are ready for cluster 4, we have 4 distinct models in which we can deploy our enterprise role construct and the processes. They are first the standalone, which is example is the MINUSTA and UNIFIL structures, where they will have their entity managed by themselves. And the number 2 is the operations center, which is RSCE and KJSO constructs. And the hybrid, which is like in UNSOM, HR is managed by RSCE, whereas the travel is managed by UNSOA in Nairobi. And there are certain exceptions, which is called once in Umoja structure, which is a transitional structure till we get all the cluster complete till cluster 5, and all our employee base is converted into Umoja. With all these things, we are ready for cluster 4. Let us take a deep dive into each and every model and understand how the roles are affecting the model you choose. First is a standalone entity. In the standalone entity, for example, MINUSTA, purely the budgetary structure, it is utilized for role assignment. The entity roles are assigned at the entity level, such as HR partner all, and within entity roles are assigned to the departments and units, such as a time manager, OM administrator, and time administrator. And there is no difference between an operative structure and a budget structure. In this example, a staff member in any of these departments request an HR service, it will be routed to the HR partners assigned at the MINUSTA entity level. the same time, the HR partner Minusta can access all the staff members under Minusta. And also remember, the constructive role will also have the display component. If you are a HR partner all in Minusta, by that virtue of HR partner all, you will also be given HR display for entire Umoja. Let's take to the next level called the operations center. An optimal design implementation of an operations center it could be either an organizational unit or it could be virtual. It means an operations center is an entity which controls multiple standalone entities under them. So instead of entity 1, 2, 3, 4 standing alone on them, they will be clustered under an operations center, and a staff from any entity can be assigned the operations center role, and by virtue of that, these entities will be managed by the operations center wherever the roles are mapped. It also bring in a built-in redundancy. If you have a set of HR partners in the operations center, they can back one another for strategic or tactical purposes, and it's also scalable and sustainable in the sense tomorrow RSCE wants to have another entity to be managed under their umbrella. We can easily add or delete without going into a rigorous development cycle. And again, in this example, it is based on an operative structure and it is not the budgetary structure. Let's plot the exact RSCE structure. And in this example, I have given 9 client mission, and all the HR functions follow this operative structure. So an HR partner all for RSCE Entities will be able to manage all the staff members under RSCE plus the 9 client mission. This is the operative structure for HR. And we are going into the hybrid model as well, in which case if you focus on Unsova, by Unsova being serviced for the HR by RSCE, they themselves will become a service center for Unsom, SESGGL and SEMG entities. And again, in this example, the staff member from Unsova assigned to those roles for travel roles will be performing travel on behalf for these entities. Let me give you 2 simple examples to make you understand how the operative structure and the enterprise role assignment will be reflected in a practical situation. I'm taking the first example, which is a very, very simplified and employee service request for a HR partner approval. The situation could be an education grant request, where a staff member from Unsom create a request in Unsom, and it will automatically route it to RSCE because RSCE is the operation structure for the client mission Unsom. It's very simple. The next is I'm going to take a travel, and a travel is again a very complicated process. I'm making a very, very simple, the entire process on 1-page type of a document. In this case, a staff member requests travel, and it goes to the travel and shipment approver, and it goes to the travel processing office for approval. If this request is an entitlement related, it will go to the HR partner and get routed back to the certifying officer. And if the request contains any shipping component, it will go to the shipping unit and shipment processing office and then come to the certification officer for approval. And again, the TPO approval results in a travel to happen and then followed by the expense report. If we take the Unsom exercise, in which the Unsom is serviced by Unsova for travel and RSCE Entities for HR, and this is how the process will be routed to the geographic location. Unsom request will go to Unsova for certification and process approval, and it will go to RSCE for HR partner approval, and the shipment process office will be in Unsova. And again, in this example, I picked up the request is funded by Unsova budget. If it is by a different budget, the travel and shipment administrator will be belonging to the manager responsible for that budget, which has been put into the travel request. So we saw the entity level, and we saw the operation center, and we saw the hybrid. And I want to give you a small taste of the inside mission, within mission roles. So within entity roles, one of the very critical is the time management, which is basically a leave request. A leave request can be created by a time administrator or a staff member themselves. For example, if there is a simple leave, which is like a sick leave or annual leave, it will be routed to the time manager, which are mapped as a role within entity. And there are special leaves such as rest and recuperation R&R, it will be routed to HR partner, and depending upon your model, it will go to the entity level HR partner or service center level HR partner. The routing is also based on how the approval process is structured. Let's see how the approval works. To do that, I would like to bring you what is called the plumbing. How the piping is done under the ground to make sure the process works. So we have 4 actors in this process: staff member, time administrator, time manager, and HR partner. And they are all related in Umoja with one single central nervous system called organizational unit, but in a different forms. A staff member is linked to an org unit through what is called a position, and a time administrator and time manager are linked to the organizational unit by the enterprise role, which is within entity enterprise role called time manager and time administrator, and they are linked to a department and they go to an org unit, because a department is also an org unit in Umoja. And a HR partner is always a role either at the entity level or at the operations center level, and again it is linked to an org unit. If all these linking is done, the approval process is very simple. The time manager or the staff creating the leave request, the system will be routing to the time manager within entity and the HR partner at the entity or service center, purely based on an organizational unit. So with this, we explained the within entity role and how it works, and the transition for going into Umoja extension or an integrated Umoja from a Umoja foundation. Some of the key change inflictors are you are getting employee self-service and on behalf administration, and we have an approving transactions which are either managed locally or centrally. The key change inflictors are all changes are recorded and reportable. That's one of the reasons the HR partner roles encompass a wide range of authority, and it's very standardized transaction processing approval across the entire Umoja framework. And it also gives you a strong local controls with a clear central oversight with the reporting structure. The factors to be kept in mind: the Umoja design can and will satisfy your business complexities, and which we are working closely with your role mapping exercise to make sure it is reflected correctly in the system. And there will be a workload shift based on the new enterprise roles. And also remember, there is a clear distinction between drafting and approvals. Segregation of duties is inbuilt into the solution, in which a staff member creating a request may not be able to certify or approve the same transactions. And also remember to encourage and leverage the self-services to the maximum. The more the self-services, the better the transactional cleanliness and transactional processing. With that, we go to the future, which is any moment from now. And to do that, I would like to conclude the presentation with the last word from Confucius. Life is really simple, but we insist on making it complicated. Let's keep it simple. And thanks for watching. And it was always a pleasure. For more information and question, send me a note on keep watching this channel. Thank you.